Hey everybody, I am in this video. I'm going to talk about the final project very briefly, so it shouldn't take too long. So please watch and listen to it. So if you look here, you can see this week's announcement, and every week in the announcement, it tells you to start reading through the final project. So I'm just going to walk you through it. Let's open the document. You should start reading through it. You should start thinking about it. It's a menu-driven program using your own ideas, okay? But I have a lot of examples, and the example comes from Zybooks, and part of it is going to be covered after midterm, week 6, 7, and 8. But you should be able to still get a start on it because you know how a menu-driven program works. You have done it in assignment 2, and I have several examples of how that works. And I also have an example here. So the purpose of this is to put everything together and to get you prepared for 162. Really, that's what the goals are. And so you can make functions. You need to be able to put them all together, use structs, which you will learn in week 7 and 8, read and write from and to files, which again, you learn in week 6. So here's a sample write-up and a replit link that has all the information with the sample data and files that you need. So what you need to do is, I'm going to go into this replit first to show you the kind of text file that you need to have to get started. So if you look in the data.txt file, I have essentially PG data for our PCC buildings, okay? So this is the name of the building, this is the annual consumption and the charge, something like that. And the write-up gives you more details. So if you open the write-up, which is a Google Doc, you can do your write-up just like this. Statistical information about energy consumed by different buildings, and that's what it has. It has energy consumption and the charge for each building if you look in this text file. Okay, so what should you be thinking about to start with? Okay, you need to come up with a data file. What kind of data would you like to have? Notice my data is separated by semicolons. It's like a CSV file. So you should also have data separated by semicolons. And if you look in your final project, I give you a list. I want you to pick from this list, okay? Or if you have an example or if you want to pick your own data, you must make sure it is not part of my Zybooks examples, which is why I give you this list of data. So you can go to any of these websites and pick 5 columns at least, or no more than 5 columns, I should say. 2 of those should be text columns. So if you look in mine, I have the name of the building is a text column. You should have one more text column and then some numbers. So 3, 4 would be an ideal number. 4 columns, right, would be a good number for this. So first, pick data that you like to work with. What would you like to do? What analysis would you like to do with it? Once you have picked your line of data, it says you must have at least, or once you picked your text file, set of data, you must have at least 10 lines of data in your text file. So your first job is to pick the data that you like, put it in a text file and send it to me and say, hey, can I use this data? Once you have that done, then it's time to do your write-up. The first thing to do is or the second thing I should say, once you get your text file, is to do your sample run. Your sample run is how do you want the output to look? Now, there are some requirements that you should look in your final project. You must have a menu, okay? You must start with a sample run. So, and you must have a write-up like this, or you can use the other design document, whatever works. Notice this write-up is a lot more simpler. It doesn't use much of the pseudocode techniques, but then there is no syntax in here as well. It uses all step-by-step plain English words, okay? So if you like this write-up format better, you can do it. But the first job is the second job is to come up with a sample run. The sample run must have a menu-driven option. It must have an add and remove to the list, add a building to the list, building to remove from the list, print the list, and then you can do any one of these. You can find a building, or you can find the building with the maximum something and the quit option. So your menu must have some of these, and those are all the requirements that is here that I want you to kind of think about. And so the first part of it is to have this write-up done. Now, I understand you may not know how to do how to read from a file or how to do a struct or any of those. You don't need to know any of those. If you look at my write-up, the sample run doesn't need you to know any of those things. So look at my sample run, use your own statistics data, use your own data and do something with it. Try to figure out what you want to do with it. And just tell me what are the different columns. All this is telling you is what are the different columns that is there in your data. So for example, I have building names, which is a char array. I have two integers, annual consumption and annual cost. You don't have to worry about the struct. Just tell me what the list of variables you will have. And if you look, it says when the program starts, it's going to read from a text file. How you read from the text file, we'll worry about that later. As far as how you're going to do it, the syntax, we will learn later. But it reads from the text file. It has this information. It displays a menu. Then it calls a function to read the option. Again, these are things that you've done in your encoder. You know how to do this in assignment number 2. You know if it is E or Q, what you need to do with it. This is the same thing. If it is A, you want to add a building. If it is R, you want to remove a building. If it's P, you want to print something. So those are all stubs. You're going to make stubs, meaning function stubs are just curly brackets saying this will be implemented later. And I'll show you some of those things on Thursday when I show you an example on assignment 4. So these are things that can be done without you having to know how to read from a file. It's just going to tell you this is what I am going to do. Okay. So the display menu function does this. The read option does this. Again, these are all things that you've done before. You know exactly how to do this. Use a switch expression to execute the different options. This, you can make a stub and say, I will do this later. This, again, if you can understand, you can do it. Again, it's simply adding a building to a list and it's incrementing count. You're removing a building from a list and you're decrementing the count, right? Because when you remove something from a list, you reduce the number. Find the building by name will go through the list. And again, this is some syntax here that you don't have to use, but it simply says this is a C++ function to do partial comparison. This is more for your reference to let you know that you can do partial comparison. And we'll take a look at this when we get there. Again, this is part of the char arrays chapter, and we'll do more on that. So this gives you an idea of what you need to do for your final project. Please get started and send me some emails, get a write-up done because your write-up will be due right after midterm. And it would also be good to set up a time with me to talk about this. It could be 10 minutes. You could take a 30-minute slot, but it shouldn't take any more than 10, 15 minutes if you have a good idea of how to do the final project. So think about it and let me know.